Okay guys, a very warm welcome to week 8 of Making Nations, Making States. Just a quick one for you tonight. We've been pretty busy. It's been a couple of weeks since we managed to do a video. Life is busy on the farm. You might be aware that there is a new goat. I think the goat was in the session with us last week. I am not guaranteeing that the goat will not be in the session on Monday as well. We'll hope it's not. But statistically there's a good chance that there will be a goat with us for our consideration of the Balkans. That is where we are going with the module for week 8. A consideration of identities, ethnicities within the context of the Balkans. We are carrying on with these Japanese rapid strike cards, mainly because I haven't had any new cards turn up. I've got this long back order, long list of back orders that just isn't moving. Nobody is really making or distributing the cards quick enough to fulfill the orders. So we're going to stick with these. Here's my guarantee for you though. Next week, naturally Wales are going to win the Grand Slam. And when that happens, I figured it was about time that we finally broke open our Champions Path box. I mean, it seems the most appropriate thing to do, isn't it, when Wales win the Grand Slam, become champions of the Six Nations, that we should open this elite trainer box. You know, it's literally gathering dust. It's been in here for so long. So that is my pledge. We will open that in one form or another next week if Wales takes a Grand Slam and you know, ticks a box of sporting nationalism for us. But that is for next week. For this week we look at the Balkans, and I'll just make a start on ripping open these packs and see what we've got. We've been pretty lucky in recent weeks with these, so we'll see where it takes us. So, what are some of the things to keep in mind about the Balkans? Well, I've scribbled down various notes that I've got on the other bit of my computer screen, and this is one classic quote for you about the Balkans as we start with a frillish. Firstly, it is critical to note that the Balkans represents one of the most ethnically, linguistically, and religiously problematic regions of the world. And you know, that is going to be the sort of the foundation of what we're dealing with. You know, the Balkans is fascinating. It is not necessarily plausible, well, let's scratch that. It is not plausible to tackle the Balkans in 2 hours. But what I hope we'll be doing is giving you the sort of the foundations upon which, I think particularly interesting in there, the foundations upon which that we can begin to understand some of the complexities of nationalist politics in an area, in a geographical area that has really, to describe it as a melting pot seems cliched, but it's one of the most appropriate descriptions that we have. The melting pot of cultures that is the Balkans. Now, of course, in terms of our chronology, sorry, it is quite foggy in here tonight. I haven't actually made it out to the centre for a couple of days, so the the humidity levels are all sorts of wrong. So we do have a bit of fog. It'll clear by Monday morning, I'm sure. Where was I? Yeah. So in terms of our chronologies, you know, we pick things up at the start of the 19th century, where you've probably got 7, maybe at most, clearly defined nations that are dominating global politics. Alongside those major European nations, we also have, what is that? What is? Oh, it's a thing. I forget its English language name. We also have the Ottoman Empire. And you know, the Ottoman Empire is still vast. It's not quite finished at this point in time. It's got a lot of tensions with European powers, got a lot of tensions with Russia, and it's still exerting major... Oh, it's just cleared. It's like the humidity levels just lifted in here. I've inhaled all the humidity. That's good. And of course, the Ottoman Empire is still exerting major influence over a large part of what is modern-day Europe. You know, we've already talked about Greece in relation to the process of nationalism, a little horsey there, and acknowledging that, you know, Greece in a sense kick-starts the process of revolutionary nationalism as it pushes towards independence, and it's breaking away from the Ottoman Empire. So a lot of what we'll be exploring is, as much as we'll be looking at some of the ethnicities within the Balkans, we'll also be touching on some of the complexities afforded to our study by the lingering presence of the Ottoman Empire. And the way in which the Ottomans rule is quite interesting, as opposed to these cards, which are not proving to be terribly interesting at all. We're dealing with some pretty fluid identities, and the concept of borders is really quite awkward. Within the Balkans, you have a lot of identity groups that are mobile. The movement of people would have been sort of quite culturally normal. The idea of being fixed within certain territories would have felt quite alien. There is something in the back there. Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu's nice. Okay, so I mean, Tapu Bulu might be as good as it gets. So the idea of sort of fixing identity groups within set borders and boundaries is really quite alien to the nature of the landscapes that we are dealing with at that point in time. So the idea of trying to introduce some of the sort of the formalities of nation into the Balkans is problematic, because the nature of identity there is fluid, it is mobile, and doesn't necessarily respect the concept of boundaries and borders, which is one of the reasons why you have such profound complexities of ethnic tensions as we push into the 20th century, because a lot of these cards are quite damaged. There's a real ding in the top of these, so hopefully there's nothing particularly good in this pack, because their value has been seriously compromised. But yeah, so in a sense you see the Balkans catching up, if you like. Still not much at all. No, we've got one more pack of these. We've gone through loads of cards and barely anything here. So we see the Balkans sort of catching up with European politics. The Enlightenment is, it's sort of comparatively late to the Balkans. What we might describe as Enlightenment in relation to religion has a very slow uptake. The influence and power of the church in the Balkans is quite profound. Is this last pack luck? There may be a couple of packs rattling around there, we'll see. But yeah, so sorry, I'm going to rush through these. So stop. Oh, okay, look at that. Okay, so we can relax. There is a card in here. So we'll work our way up to that special card as we finish things off. So we'll be dealing with those religious complexities, ethnic complexities, and the influence of external forces. Now, I suppose what I should have done at the start of this video is explain why. Why are we looking at the Balkans? Well, it is that importance of ethnicity. We touched a little bit in terms of identity and the complexities of it within the nationalism project by looking at Wales last week. Ethnicities within the narrative of nationalist politics in the 19th century is often sort of overlooked in the broader tellings of nationalism in this period. If we look into the more specific detail of what's actually playing out in European politics at that point in time, the narrative of ethnicities is quite important as we pull Vic TDV. Very nice. Not the rarest, but it means this card pull wasn't a complete bust. We'll take Victini V. Very nice. And it escaped the dings. So yeah, good. Okay, we'll take it. For want of anything else, we will take Victini. That's a lot of cards for one Victini V. So these narratives are often overlooked. And so it's important to give voice to these groups, because that is the sort of the complexity of the nationalist narrative. As much as the Balkans is sort of playing catch up politically, culturally, religiously, the same can be said of the myriad of identity groups within that area, and really a sort of a full embracing of the sort of nationalism that many of the major European powers go through at the start of the period of our study, is something that nations within the Balkans really begin to embrace wholeheartedly as we get into the 20th century. So it's a different chronology, a different set of issues that we're not going to fully resolve on Monday, but it is, I think, of really quite critical importance to be aware of them, because it does highlight, again, as I say, the complexity of the narratives that we're dealing with at this point in European history. On that, I will stop, because I'm starting to get into stuff that we want to talk about on Monday. So, as I'm recording this quite late on Sunday, I'll see you all fairly soon. Apologies, we'll get next week's video out much earlier, hopefully. Depending on how many lambs are born during the course of this week, there should be quite a few. They're running a bit behind schedule. So we'll see. Who knows? By the time I'm doing this video next week, this centre might be full of sheep. It's possible. Don't bet against it. On that, guys, I will say goodnight, and at this stage of the week, I'll see you tomorrow morning. All right. See you then. Good night.